So here we're going to have a little recap of the circular flow of income. Now, the circular flow of income is a very useful model that we as economists use in order to get more of a simplified picture about how the economy works and to give us a bit more of an insight into how the different sectors in the economy are interdependent and how the money flows within an economy. So if we kick things off, we really start with what we call the two-sector model, where we have the production sector. And in the production sector, you're most likely to find businesses. And in direct relation with the production sector, we have the household sector. And the household sector, we're going to find consumers, people like you and I. Now, before we start getting into things like income and consumption, we have what's called the real flow between these two sectors, businesses and consumers. So in our capitalist society, it is us, the consumers, who control the factors of production. Factors of production. So let's think about that for a sec. As consumers, we control the land, labour, capital, resources. So you're a consumer, you control your own labour. You will decide where you want to work, where you're going to give that labour to. So you get up in the morning and you go to work. As a result of you going to work, businesses are then able to take all this land and labour and they're able to produce goods and services. They're able to produce goods and services. Okay. Sometimes we call this output, this production. So there we go. The reason why I will get up in the morning and go to work is primarily to be paid an income. Okay, and we're going to put a little Y next to income. Okay, so here we go. Consumers receive income from the production sector. So that's the flow of money there. We then get paid and we decide, you know what? I'm going to use that income and I'm going to buy some goods and services to fulfill my needs and wants. We call this buying behaviour, we'll call that consumption. Or we can call this consumption expenditure. Okay, and we'll put a little C there. So C represents consumption expenditure. So here I am using my income and I'm then using it to buy goods and services from local producers or local businesses to satisfy my needs and wants. Here we see that no money is leaking out of the flow of income. We simply see that what we earn is spent. Now that's very unrealistic. That's very unrealistic. We're not always going to consume everything we earn, okay? Why? In this situation is always equal to consumption. In reality, it's not the case. We also have what's called the financial sector. And the financial sector is where primarily we see banks, these institutes that let us do two very different things. On one hand, we as consumers can decide, okay, I don't want to spend all my money on consumption expenditure. Some of it is going to go into savings. We'll represent that with an S. Then, after a period of time, myself, the consumer, I might be a business owner, or the banks themselves might decide to invest. So we'll call this investment. To invest those savings, represent that with an I. Okay? So if we look at savings on this side, what we notice is savings is a form of leakage. In fact, everything on this left-hand side here we'll refer to as a leakage, and everything on the right-hand side here we're going to refer to as an injection. So, look at savings for a sec. Savings is considered a leakage because this is money that should be used for consumption to go back to businesses who can continue production and continue paying their employees an income. But if we put the money just into savings, what we find is that that money becomes stagnant and it stops moving or it stops flowing around this circular flow of income. So it's very important that in an economy, we then reinvest those savings, whether that's purchasing shares or property, or replacing faulty equipment, whatever, that we reinvest the money so it goes back to businesses and then they can continue to pay their employees and so on and so forth. It's very important that the injections plug the leakages. So what do we have so far? We have our income is being consumed as well as saved. Okay. In reality, we can do more than just this with our income. We can also introduce what we call the government sector. The government sector. So the government sector comes along, and what we find is that money then leaks again through taxation. So every financial year, the government will take a percentage of our income. Okay, they'll go towards the government. Again, taxation is a leakage because this is money that should be consumed or should be invested, but now is just being hoarded by the government, if you think about it that way. The government should then invest that money back into government projects. I don't know, a new hospital, a new freeway, a new airport, what have you, in the form of government spending. This will inject that lost taxation revenue back into the economy. Government spending, put a G there. Okay, so if the government builds a new airport, that's thousands of new jobs in the production sector which are created or maintained, which will then mean that we can continue with our income and continue with our production as well. Finally, Australia is an open economy. Okay, we trade with many different nations. So we have the foreign sector. Foreign sector. And this foreign sector gives us the ability to import goods and services from overseas. Now, imports are considered a leakage because we're quite literally sending our money overseas to some foreign economy in exchange for a good or service. So our money is literally leaking out of the economy as we're sending it overseas to buy something. We want to plug this leakage with the injection of exports. Now, exports are healthier for an economy, as now we're producing goods and services, we're selling these goods and services overseas, which leads to us being able to pay employees more, etc. But we're also accepting foreign currencies and injecting them into our economy as our businesses keep producing, etc., etc. Just so you know, we're going to refer to this thing called balance of payments, and that's referring to the foreign sector there. The idea of balance of payments is you want your imports and exports to balance or to be the same. That way, we're not leaking or expanding too quickly. So that's a balance of payments. You want your imports to equal your exports. So here's the circular flow of income, and this is the 5-sector model now. We can actually represent this rather than in a model, we can represent it in an equation as well. And the equation will look like this. C plus S plus T plus M is equal to C plus I plus G plus X. Now, if we have a closer look at this equation here, what we notice is on one side, we have our leakages, and on the other side, we have our injections. Okay. You'll notice that C's on both sides. Technically, we could simplify this equation and just get rid of C, but this is how they represent what we call our equilibrium. Now, equilibrium is a very special thing. If our leakages, all these things down the left-hand side, are equal to our injections, what we find is that money keeps flowing in our economy. It doesn't become stagnant or lost, or it doesn't get re-injected too quickly, because that will cause what's called a disequilibrium. But if we focus on equilibrium for a second, what we can see here is where the money continues to flow, things remain stable. When I say things, I mean things like income and production, they remain stable. To finish this off, we can have two forms of disequilibrium. Disequilibrium. And the two forms of disequilibrium, they occur for two different reasons. So let's say leakages are greater than our injections, so more money is being lost. This form of disequilibrium we call a contraction. This form of disequilibrium is a contraction. So our economy will slow down, okay? So eventually when money doesn't get back to the production sector, we'll find our national income levels will drop, our national production will drop, or our nation's GDP, our gross domestic product, will drop, okay, when our leakages are too great. Likewise, another form of disequilibrium is when our injections are higher than our leakages. When our injections are higher than our leakages, we have an expansion. So what we find here is that more money is going towards our production sector. So we have an increase in national income, an increase in production. It's not all rainbows and sunshine though. If our expansion is happening too quickly, then many things could happen. Usually this will result in rising inflation. When you have a really, really fast expansion, the price of goods and services or inflation tends to pick up quite rapidly. We could also go very close to what's called full employment if expansion's going too quickly. So basically we run out of labor. Okay, but that's something we can talk about later in the trade cycle. So basically here's the 5-sector model of the circular flow of income, a very useful tool we can use to analyze how each of the sectors are interdependent. We can predict what will change in the economy when all the flows of money are slightly varied or conditions change. And basically then we can use this to manage the economy, because as economists we can look and say, all right, in order to bring our economy back to equilibrium, we need to increase, for example, government spending. Okay, so it helps us manage the economy so we know where we can plug leakages with injections. Okay, that's the circular flow of income.